Before filling out an online report, let's look at when we do not want to use the online reporting option. If it's an emergency, of course, call 911. If this incident or crime that you want to report involves a suspect that is known, contact the Bellingham Police Department directly. If it occurred anywhere outside the city limits, to include I-5, you need to contact the appropriate law enforcement agency. If it's a collision resulting in damage under $1,000, you can actually click on a link. It takes you directly to the Washington State Patrol website where you can report that collision there. If you're reporting identity theft, contact the Bellingham Police Department and review our identity theft resources. And if it's a fraud or scam with a loss, then contact the Bellingham Police Department directly. Also listed here, there's some information about what happens after you file the report. We'll come back to that at the end and take a look. So now let's move on to actually filing a report. The first page we navigate to is where we fill out the incident type. These are the only crimes that we can actually accept online reports for. You can read both the definitions and examples, but I'll just go through some of the highlights. Bicycle theft is an option. Fraud, which is typically a scam where there's a monetary benefit. Harassing phone calls. Hit and run with no suspect, that's the key. Lost property. Malicious mischief, which is vandalism to property. Theft, which is any property taken that wasn't taken from within a fence, a dwelling, a house. That would be a burglary, and you have to contact the police directly for that. And the last one is vehicle prowl. We're actually going to click on vehicle prowl. It's a very common report, and it gives us examples of how to fill out information for your vehicle and property that was taken. On the next page, it has the definition and examples of vehicle prowl, just to make sure that's what you indeed did want to click on. There's also a confirmation question. In this case, it says, is the total value of the property higher than $5,000? So we're going to say that it was below $5,000 and continue through the process. On the next page, we're going to fill out the person type. Click individual if you're reporting this for yourself. Click business if this was a work vehicle and you're making the report for someone else. In this field, we're going to fill out the information for the person making the report. Make sure this is all accurate. Now we're going to enter the address of where this incident actually occurred. If it happened at your home address, you can click that selection. One thing to point out before we move on, and this is one of the most common mistakes we see, is people not getting the incident address correct. So when you enter the incident address, there's a specific box for the number of the address, and then the next box over will be the direction. So if it was on West Holly Street, that's where you would select the W. For street name, there's a drop-down box that has names of streets in Bellingham. So if you don't find the street name, it's because it's not within the city limits. Next, we have the street type, so lane, avenue, street, etc., and then apartment number. So it's very important that you fill this out correctly so that it syncs with our reporting system. Below that, we're going to select the incident start time. That means when did this incident potentially happen? If it's a vehicle prowl or a theft, you can write when you last knew that your property was secure. And then the incident time end would be when you actually discovered the crime. If this was an incident, say a vandalism that you actually watched maybe on a camera, you could actually write the very specific incident and end times. But sometimes this is a general window. For this example, we're going to say that it happened at 10 o'clock in the evening is when our vehicle was last secured. And the next morning at 7 a.m. is when we discovered it. We're going to say that it happened in a parking lot. For method of entry, it's either force or no force. So if a window is broken, we're going to select force in this situation. And then was property stolen from the vehicle? We're going to say yes. Now we're going to fill out all the information for our vehicle. And this is much easier if you get the registration and just go through this process. You'll have everything you need to fill it out. For amount of damage, that is the damage that occurred during the vehicle prowl. So for our example, we'll just say the driver's side window was broken, and we'll estimate that at about $300. For vehicle description, you can just give a fairly generic description. If you have something very notable, like a sticker on the window or something that would set it apart, you can indicate that there as well. If you were reporting an incident where 2 or more vehicles were broken into, this is where you could make your selection, add vehicles, and go through the same process we just went through. We'll stay with just 1 vehicle at this time and move on to the next portion. Now we're going to enter information for any property that was stolen within the car. So think about 1 item at a time and give it the most appropriate labels and description you can. We're going to use an example that maybe a bike was inside the vehicle and that was taken. So we're going to go through that process. Brand, model, color, serial number is extremely important in the case of bikes, but also with tools or anything else that has a serial number. For property description, you can be somewhat generic, or you can write down any unique features of that item that was stolen. Next, we have the option to add in more property. Keep in mind, it's very important that each item be entered separately. One of the most common mistakes we see is people will enter in items such as a purse, a wallet, or a backpack, and in the property description for that item, they will list everything else that was taken. So in this example, a purse was stolen. That's going to be one item. Then we're going to go back to this field. We're going to add property. We're going to add a wallet, fill out all the appropriate information. We'll also add the driver's license. We'll add the 2 credit cards. And in the serial number section is where you write the number of the credit card. And then we'll add the keys. This is very important so that we not only know what was taken, but if any items are recovered, we can come back and edit the report. In our case, we're going to say that it was just the bike stolen from the vehicle prowl, and we're going to move on to the next field. Next, we have the narrative portion of the report. This is where you can provide us with a general summary of what happened. Last of all, you'll be able to review the report, go through all the information, make sure that it's accurate, and if it is, you can click on Submit to Report. Once your report is complete, you can view and print out a temporary copy for your records if you need. Once an officer actually reads and approves the report, a copy will be emailed to you with a PDF attachment. Lastly, if an officer reviews your case and finds that further investigation is needed, you may be contacted. If you have any questions about the online reporting process that we did not cover in this video, feel free to contact the Bellingham Police Department directly at 360-778-8800.